Welcome to the Disrupt Your Career podcast, brought to you by Claire Harbour
and Antoine Tirard. We're passionate about helping everyone find fulfillment in their work life.
We believe that big, messy, uncharted career changes are inevitable, and it's up to you to decide.
Will you take control and disrupt, or allow yourself to be disrupted?
We wrote the book about it, and now we share here our conversations with other thinkers in this crucial area.
Settle down and get ready to listen to this dose of wisdom.
This time on the Disrupt Your Career podcast, I'm really happy to be welcoming Irina Cozma. Irina is a coach, a speaker, a trainer, and consultant who supports professionals to have better career adventures. Irina, welcome. Thank you so much for joining me.
Thank you so much for having me.
Wonderful. Let's start as we always do with your career journey. You've been through several pivots and challenges in your career, like many of us, starting in HR and recruitment with giants like Motorola and steel company ArcelorMittal. You also got into training and assessment in academic settings as well as corporate, and then became more and more specialized in leadership and talent development. You've coached both MBAs and physicians, as well as many individuals, and you teach at Purdue University. Please share with us how this extraordinary career has unfolded. Tell us about how much it was by design and how much through serendipity, and what were your key moments of pride and challenge?
It's a mix of serendipity and plan. And now I know from my clients that this planning part and the direction, it takes some time for people to reach that space of having a direction. And as I reflect on my own career, once I have had a direction, things were easier. The serendipity came finding the direction and during following the direction. But funny story, even if now I'm an organizational psychologist, that is my direction. Initially, it didn't start like that. I did not know that I'm going to be an organizational psychologist. I didn't know that profession exists. Initially, I was more at the mercy of my family and what they wanted me to do, and the mercy of the circumstances. And good serendipities, I think, in retrospect, one of the serendipities was that in my 5th grade, a trainer came to our school and ranked us on the height. And because I was the tallest, they said, "Hey, do you want to come and play volleyball?" So this is how I ended up playing volleyball for 8 years, going to the Romania national team at the junior level. And it looked there for a second that I'm going to be an athlete. And that was my direction. But it did not end up like that. The story did not end it there. Then my father had his own business, his own bakery with my mother. And what he wanted me to be was an accountant to help with the family business. So I went to school. My high school was about accounting and economics and this type of balance sheets. So for a second, it looked like I'm going to be an accountant. At one point, I realized that people are interesting to me. And I start thinking, what profession can I have that has to do with people? And that's how I learned about psychology initially. And then I learned about organizational psychology, 20 years of intentional direction, but also stumbling around things that got me where I am today.
And you stumbled around some pretty impressive places, right? And I'm wondering, you must have worked alongside and for very different types of leaders in the different places that you've worked. What lessons did you learn from them as you went along?
Because I lived and worked and studied in 4 different countries, and I saw people in different places, and I'm married with somebody who is from yet another country. So for me, things became a little more relative around humans and leaders. And I approached this question more from what I learned is that leaders are human. That's what I learned, that at the end of the day, behind every leader, it's a person. And what I'm trying to be more intentional in my work is to take care of the person. The leader is just one component of the person, but fundamentally leaders have the same needs like any of us that are not leaders, and they have the same struggles plus one more. They have to handle a team, they have to make bigger decisions, But I think if you approach the humanity and the struggles like any other human has, and if you solve for that, that will help with the other pieces, with the leadership pieces.
I love that. It's simple and absolutely true. It's an undeniable truth, regardless of the opinions that you build around it. But yes, every leader so far is human. Whether AI takes us into other dimensions is another question, but let's not go on that journey today. Let's talk about a different kind of journey. The transition that you made from being a full-on corporate employee to becoming a freelance consultant. I mean, you've done it in perhaps a gradual way to some extent, but nevertheless, it's a huge change, but it's also a challenge. Tell us more about that.
Thank you for that question. And again, I can see how all these questions build on each other in a way, because this brings me back to the original question about the direction. I never knew that I'm going to have my own business one day. I was just walking towards the direction. And as I was walking toward a direction, this path became a thing interesting to me. I started my own business because of an existential crisis. After that, I learned that many entrepreneurs start their businesses because of existential crisis. Probably not all of them, but I'm hearing more and more this idea. I started in 2019 just to solve for a deep, profound crossroads chaos that was happening in my mind. And this looked like one way for me to get myself out of the crisis. Over the years, I persisted because it was interesting. I found an outlet that a full-time job did not allow me to have. There was so much freedom, and I made my own decisions, and I thought about my own pricing, and I thought about how I get my clients, and there was so much freedom in that. And also along the way, I discovered that freedom is actually one of my values. So it made sense to stick on this path, and very slow transition for me. I know people, again, every journey is different. To me, it took around 6 years to do in parallel a full-time job and my business until I felt like the time is right to do the full transition. But it was a journey I never expected for me to have my own business. I would say especially because I had the example of my parents. I know sometimes things happen exactly the opposite because your family has one and you want to have one. For me, it was exactly the opposite. Because I saw how hard it is, I never wanted until life had other plans.
So you created an opportunity out of a crisis, and you don't have to get up at 3:00 in the morning to make bread, right?
Thanks. Yes, yes. So that was, it was so hard for my family, like for 20 years. They didn't sleep one night, I think. They didn't go on one day of vacation in 20 years. They ended up divorcing. So I was like, why would anybody choose that? But yeah, I realized I don't have to make a bakery. I don't have to.
Exactly. So you create your own version of freedom.
Exactly.
Beautiful. Let's talk about the learning and experience that you've created in all these different contexts, countries, types of entity, different types of clients and situations and leadership. It's really complicated for a young person, especially in 2025, to be thinking about how they start their careers. What advice do you have for such people?
Such a good question. I hope any of the young people listening to us can give some relief to them. I do end up coaching sometimes the young generation, and I see the struggle that they have to try to find the perfect answer, the final answer, the only answer. They put so much pressure on them, maybe themselves, maybe the family, the society, the school. Everybody is like, what is it? And I hope even from what we talked so far, you could see another human being that didn't have the answer, and the answer came along the way. And I started on different paths, and I'm still here. It was not the end of the world. I learned different things. You keep evolving and exploring and find things along the way. So try to understand that these decisions about career are not final decisions. Very few decisions in life are final and forever. Your career, it's not one of them. Yes, it's true. If you change your mind later, it's going to be a little harder. You'll have to spend some time to figure it out, but you can definitely change your mind later. Whatever you decide early on doesn't have to be forever, doesn't have to be perfect. There are people who are changing career in their 60s, in their 70s, people who go do PhDs in their 90s. So it's never too late. You can figure things out along the way. Don't try to have the perfect answer when you are so young.
That's excellent advice. And I would say even more appropriate and relevant in this time, as opposed to the time that you or I grew up when perhaps it was more frowned on to change career a lot. It's now more than acceptable. It's probably desirable somehow.
It's an information that people don't have. They don't know that other people change career, or maybe they know my family, my friends, my relatives, they did not change careers. So therefore, I would assume that people don't change careers.
Yes.
But there are many people who change careers. But if we can be a little more observant and read a little and ask outside of our regular circle, you will see it becomes more normal.
Yeah. So let's talk about this idea that you have about career adventures. Your byline is let's have better career adventures. I love that. It's bold, it's exploratory, it's all kinds of things. But tell us more about how you came to this viewpoint.
Thank you for that question. That's such a nice question. It took me by surprise. I would say first, again, serendipity. I just read it somewhere, I think, and it stuck with me. So I had those words written down for many years, and I was like, oh, let's do something with these words because they resonated with me so much. I'm like, maybe they resonate with others. So I started using this tagline, and over the years, people complimented me, like similar as you said, like, this is so interesting, this is so resonant, I like it so much. And I felt like, okay, there is something that speaks to people. And what I like about it are two things. One, I'm very intentional not to use the word leadership so much in everything I'm doing. It would be so easy for me to do that. I worked 10 years in consulting. I worked in a Fortune 50 company, Fortune 500 companies. Leadership is my life. It's all I did in my life, leadership. Because what I said earlier, leaders are people. I'm trying not to use the word leadership because it's already a very overused word. So I like this tagline, let's have a better career adventure. First of all, it doesn't have the word leadership. So it's for every human, anybody, leaders included. The second thing that I like is this word adventures. Bring some levity, bring some curiosity, bring some openness. Maybe hopefully makes a person who goes to work every morning 9 to 5 like a semi-robot. Make them stop a little and think, hey, this can be interesting, this can be fun, this can be more than a paycheck. And by the way, nothing wrong if some jobs sometimes are just a paycheck. It's all good with that. But sometimes maybe we are in a different space and a different stage of our life when a job can be a little more than a paycheck. And I hope this sentence can bring an idea, an insight to people that maybe there is a little more that they could ask from themselves and from the job.
Lovely. Let's talk about how you do your career coaching. You have this rather nice 3-step approach or process, which is go broad, go deep, go forward. Tell us a little bit more about how this way of thinking came about and how it can help those contemplating some sort of big career change.
I will start by qualifying a little, saying that I have two types of clients. So some of them work on these radical career changes, and the other work on leadership executive coaching. So this framework applies to the ones that are looking for a radical career change. Those are the people who come to me and, for example, had a client who was a software engineer at Microsoft. And he was like, it's okay, but this is not it. So what is it? Then we start exploring different options, and months later, he came up with an idea. Well, maybe it's urban planning. Urban planning is interesting to me. Then, okay, let's explore more. And now he's actually ended up to do a master in another type of engineering. I think I don't know if it's mechanical engineering or something very different. So this exploration, this changing radically your career, it's a very amorphous and very long-term process. It does start with this, what I call a go broad stage, because first we need to bring new information into our brain and we need to learn something that we don't know already. This going broad exploratory research stage is a longer stage, is the most annoying stage, is the most frustrating stage, is the most people feel like desperate in that stage because it takes so long until you see what is it, and you have to keep asking yourself what else until you start seeing the direction. So that first stage, I always try to give us realistic expectations to my clients. That's exactly what I would just say. Like, it's going to take time, it's going to be painful, it's going to be frustrating, it's going to be a lot of emotional energy, is going to be a lot of false starts. They're going to feel you have it, and then you don't have it, and then you have it, and you don't have it. So that go broad stage is a fundamental place where people who look for radical career change, they should allow themselves time and space to explore. You cannot rush during that stage. You cannot find your answer in a week or two, or even a month or two. You need to have patience. You need to be in a good place where you are now, because if you are in a rush, because you have a terrible manager, a terrible work situation, you will want to rush through this stage. And that's another thing that I'm trying to balance with my clients. But once this exploration stage ends, and ends by the person seeing a direction, there is a second stage that I call go deep. And what that means is go a little more, so the way I say it, try to touch that next profession, next career, try to shadow it, try to get the project, try to work on a side thing over the weekend, try to get closer, deeper, before you actually make a big investment, because many times this radical career changes requires you to go back to school or invest more money in a certification. So before you go and put all of your financial resources and even more time, there is this go deep stage where you need to make sure that this is it. You might need to get some upskilling during this period. And once you do all of that, then it's the last stage, which I call go forward, which is basically a job application. You can make your resume, you can start job search and all of that, which is not easy, but is so much easier comparing with everything else that happened before here.
I mean, your go broad is our explore, your go deep is our experiment. We have similar thinkings about the stages. We call them different things, but that's wonderful. The world is full of rich approaches to this kind of thing. Let's talk a little bit about training, because this is part of talent and career management, whether it's coming from within or without. You don't believe in traditional training. You even say that it doesn't work. Tell us more about this philosophy and how you turn it into an opportunity.
I promise you, I'm not trying to be controversial here. It's really exactly what I believe. I'm a trained trainer. I'm a certified trainer. I deliver training in my life. I created training. So I know a lot about training, but the training I was taught to deliver and to create 10 years ago, again, that one does not work today. And today we have so much more information about how the brain works that we have no excuse to keep doing the things that we are doing with what I call traditional training 10 years ago. We know that the brain needs repetition, the brain needs space to learn, the brain needs interaction. You cannot just expect people to listen something for hours and then go back to their workplace and just implement and execute what they just learned. I play this game many times with some of my clients. I ask them, did you do any training last year? And some of them say, yeah, I did a training. And I say, what was the training about? I think 90% of them don't remember, even the main topic. What was the training about? They remember vaguely that they were in a training session. And those who remember, let's say, oh yeah, I was in a leadership training. I'm like, okay, what did you learn? And they might say, yeah, it was something about delegation. I was like, okay, did you apply? Did you become better at delegation? And they're like, no, it made sense there in the moment, but now I forgot. I don't know what they taught us about delegation. And that's, to me, the historical story about training. There is so much time, so much money invested into these trainings that are not actually producing behavioral change on the back end. So when I deliver training, I don't call them training. I call them workshops, just to make sure that I'm distancing myself from what usually people think about training. And I'm introducing a lot of hands-on things. So I'm not there to lecture. Like, I'm not here for 1 hour to hear me talking or reading from a PowerPoint. I'm going to tell you something for 5 minutes, and then you go and do something. Go do a breakout. Go create something, list something, discuss something, reflect on something. You have to do something. You cannot just listen. So
you're learning in action.
Yes. And then also, whenever I have a chance, if you deliver a couple of trainings for an organization, you need to do something in between. Again, you cannot just let these people, I teach you today about delegation, next week I'm teaching you about influencing, and the following something about communication, and there is nothing else in between. Like, these people need to practice something. And And that's where I come back to my happy place with this, which is coaching. Coaching to me is like this superpower, a super tool that helps with that retention and helps with that person to practice what they just learned, and that accountability and that momentum forward. Sometimes I say, I don't believe in training without coaching on the back end. I mean, nothing wrong with training, but you cannot just stop there. If you stop there, it's just waste of time and money.
Wonderful. Absolutely with you on that one. What would you like organizations to be doing better when it comes to talent and career management? And if by any chance you have any great examples of companies that do these things particularly well, we'd love to hear about it.
I always say, I wish companies start behaving like we are in 21st century. Companies still behave like we are in 19th century, and we are still practicing the same stuff that we practiced in 19th century. And I'm a little worried that 21st century will leave and we are still going to be in 19th century. There are many reasons why, and again, especially big companies, it's very hard to change something in a gigantic company. But the fact that it's hard doesn't mean that we shouldn't keep trying. And I can see these waves back and forward, back and forward. I feel like I wish it would be 2 steps forward and 1 step backwards. I feel like many times it's 2 steps forward, 2 steps backwards, or 3 steps backwards. So there is attempts, there are ideas. I mean, people come up with suggestions and different ways of doing things, more tailored to, again, 21st century, majority white-collar knowledge worker type of work that we are doing now. So 2 examples that cross my mind. One is around performance management. And I know there is, again, so much things that are written about performance management, and we can make a session only on that. I have strong opinions on that. There are a couple of companies. The one that I will mention here is Pagaya. Pagaya is a fintech company. And I just start following their CHRO on LinkedIn. And I'm so impressed with what she's doing there, like around performance management. So she really tries to move that company in what I say called 21st century. I don't know if it's still a startup, but it's a smaller company, and she worked in big companies. And I liked her realism that, yes, in a big company, probably she couldn't do what she's doing now in the smaller companies and fresh new company, not a historical company coming with 100 years of background. Is different and harder to change. So she's doing some things around performance that is more about what I think makes sense for us to focus on the learning, on the evolving, on the growing. What's the point of measuring the past? The future is more important. So how do we make people move towards and become more performant in the future? That's a much more interesting proposition. So she's doing a great job there on performance management. And another example that comes from my own experience at Salesforce. Again, a big company, pluses and minuses like on all the other companies, but on this topic, what really impressed me, what Salesforce is doing and still investing in, is their coaching and mentoring programs. So they are really serious about coaching. They have hundreds of internal coaches. They have also working with external coaching. And I was a beneficiary of coaching while I was there. And I was on the other end, receiving coaching and also giving coaching. I played both. And that's an amazing gift that you can give to, I mean, coaching usually is expensive. So if you can give that to your employees for free inside of a company, that's one of the best things that I feel like you can do for your employees. And the mentoring program, also very well organized. So, I mean, I don't know how much, probably it costs things to do this stuff, but I'm imagining
But it also costs a lot to lose employees.
And not to grow people and not help them become better. So, yeah.
Yes. Wonderful. Very developmental, very inspirational examples. Thank you. Let's hope that other company leaders are listening to this and will take heart and be bolder with how they share resources like coaching and mentoring. Let's go way back to 18-year-old Irina. What advice would you be giving her if you could go back to her and talk to her now?
Whenever I get this question, I get so scared. I'm going to answer in 2 ways. First, I wouldn't want anything to change. Like I'm one of those people who say like everything had a reason why it was the way it was. And I'm in such a good place right now that I feel like I'm worried that if I change any piece in the domino will go in a different way.
Absolutely.
because of that, my first reaction to that question is like nothing, like let her be, because whatever she did ended up with me being here today. And that's an amazing place. My life was better and better and better year after year. So I'm sure it's going to become even better. But if I have to answer something to that question, I would say would have been useful to me to learn how to speak a little earlier. And what do I mean by that? I'm a very introvert and very shy person. I'm a person who went through all of my formal education, including my 2 masters, without ever raising my hand in the classroom to say something.
Wow.
The only time I raised my hand to say something, and those are very few times, was when class participation counted for the grade. So they said, you have to raise your hand twice this semester to get your points. And I was like, I'm not stupid. I understand how this game is being played. You said 2 times, 1, 2. I can do that. But otherwise, I never opened my mouth to say anything. When I reached US 17, 18 years ago to do my Ph.D., I said, I'm going to keep like this. It worked so far. It's going to keep working maybe. And plus, when I reached here, I had a language also. Like I'm young. So the first semester, did what I always did, did not open my mouth. And then I realized that this country is going to eat me alive if I don't learn how to talk and speak up and share and just open my mouth and say something, hopefully something useful. And that was one of my struggles. Like, I don't want just to open my mouth. I want to say something that is useful. It's hard to start practicing that when you are 28, 29 years old versus if I would have started when I was 14, 15 years old.
Wonderful. Fantastic. So you wouldn't change anything, but you'd learn to speak up and develop into, isn't it funny that today you're actually one of your professional activities is being a speaker? You found your voice finally, right?
Yes, I had to do an accelerated training with my workshop with myself. A lot of practice, a lot of pain.
Congratulations on getting past that, going outside your comfort zone, far outside. Let's come right back to right now. We're not quite a quarter of the way through the year. What is 2025 bringing you in terms of exciting projects and activities?
I am now trying to play a little with LinkedIn and try to find my voice, see how do I say what I want to say in written and create some conversations. I'm an introvert. I want deep relation, deep connection, deep thinking, deep conversation. I'm not there for the likes and for like, well done. I want to learn something. And even a post I posted last week, I learned something about myself and it took me by surprise. So that's one of my things this year. I want to find my voice in writing and in LinkedIn. And then the other one, I am writing a book and I am trying to create a good final draft by the end of this year. So that's one of my priorities for the year.
Beautiful. Well, we'll definitely want to have you back in our author chat version to hear about that once you're closer to finishing. And the audience will be not far off being able to buy the book. Fantastic. Irina, it's been a real pleasure getting to know you today and getting your insight on so many different aspects of careers. Thank you so much for joining me.
Great questions. And thank you for making this a very pleasant conversation.
We hope you enjoyed hearing from this month's guest as much as we did.
Do go and check out our work on disrupt-your-career.com and come back soon. Thank you.